Well, welcome back to another episode of Lessons into Blessings podcast. I have a fellow investor, fellow engineer, fellow friend on this podcast today. We're going to hear a little bit about his journey, hailing all the way from the Bahamas and just his journey of coming to the US, his journey of entering into the real estate game, and really to take a little bit away, you guys, to help you guys take a little bit away from his story. So, welcome on for me, Charles Rose.
Awesome. Tari, it is so great to be on this podcast. And I was just saying and thinking how I just love the name of your podcast, Lessons into Blessings. There are so
Definitely.
many of those. I'm afraid, Tari, like if we were to go into all of the lessons that turn into blessings, like we would be recording forever. So
We absolutely
uh,
would.
so I'm gonna need your help to kind of like to shorten it for me because that I mean if I was to go on and share all these stories and everything and if you were to and all of your the people you feature on this podcast like we would be listening to your podcast forever, which is great by the
Absolutely.
way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
I think we need time to invest in between, right?
For sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. But you know what, though? I think just with your story coming here and just all the things you learned along that trajectory, and we can obviously give people snippets because, there's probably tons of things we could talk about. But I wanted to get people just to understand a little bit about your background, what brought you to the US, how'd you get started. We share some similarities. And so I wanted to just start in on that. And then we can also talk about just some of the ways you differentiate yourself in the investment game, being a newbie, right? You got started in 2019, which is like, I mean, that was only about maybe 4 years ago, right? And what you've been able to do. And so one of the reasons why we have the podcast is because there's a lot of people sitting on the sidelines because of fear and all sorts of different reasons. And the reality is like things are going to happen, right? Mistakes are going to be made. There's so many things that we can glean from that. And so I always like to share just everyday people stories of people who just jumped in. At some point, you got to jump into that fear and just run with it. So yeah, so help people just learn a little bit about who you are and just a little bit about your background. What brought you here?
Absolutely. So I was born and raised in the Bahamas from I was very little and always had this dream of coming to the USA and living there and achieving my dreams, which at the time was becoming a civil engineer. And so I it's a long story, but I'm going to kind of give you the shortened version. So for me, I came over to the US on a one-way airplane ticket. Didn't have the money for school, just my faith, my dreams, and not much money at all. And all the money I had, I pretty much spent it on like application fees and all those different things that you need to do before you get into college. And I didn't have much money to start with.
Yeah.
And so coming over here to the USA on a one-way airplane ticket, and just on my faith, didn't know what was going to happen. Like Tari, I almost got kicked out of school, literally because I didn't have the money, and it was just a journey back then. But to cut a long story short, I was able to get through college completely debt free. And my story is a little bit from others. Some people got scholarships, some people, their family had money, some people used loans. Well, I wasn't eligible for most loans, just from where I came from. In terms of scholarships, I didn't get much scholarships, but my story was different. So because I went off to the U.S. on a one-way ticket, and it all worked out. Like, I mean, it's just amazing the way it worked out, from people like chipping in who didn't even like know me that well, but just through the grace of God, I was able to finish that first semester, and then my story was aired on TV in the Bahamas,
Oh wow.
and you had people from all around the world and just calling and trying to help me. So my story was a little bit different, how my college got funded. And because of that, I've always had this passion to help people. I always had it on the inside of me to pay it forward. And so kind of fast forwarding from my story becoming a civil engineer. So all of that moment, it was a great moment. Made a lot of accomplishments. And then, fast forward into the moment on my job where I ended up like sort of hitting that like ceiling and that dead end. And I was moving up, but I got to a point where I was to move to the next level. My supervisor was telling me how great I was doing, and promised me a raise and a promotion, and didn't happen. I had to fight for it for like 2 years,
Right.
and it was crazy. So I was like, then finally, when I got the promotion, they gave me an annual raise of $1,000, not monthly, not weekly, an annual. So if you do the math, right,
Been there,
1,000
been
divided
there.
by 12 minus taxes, right? And so I was like, okay, yeah, I was like, I'm not going to put up with this. And so, obviously I complained, and they adjusted it. And the one of the top managers in the company came to my job and scolded me for being ungrateful and all these other
Wow.
words that I'm not going to say on your podcast.
Wow.
And yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. And so crazy. And that moment like rubbed me the wrong way. He calmed down, a little at the end, and explained to him what happened, but still that rubbed me the wrong way.
Yeah.
And but it woke me up, right? So I
Yeah.
always like lessons into blessings, right? That was a lesson that turned into a blessing. So for me, I made a vow to myself that day and this was back in 2019. I made a vow to myself that day that I will never let anyone determine my financial future. I'm not going to rely on
Yeah.
anyone. If I want to get a raise, if I want to do something different in life, I'm going to go out there and make it happen.
That's good.
And I kept that vow, and it helped me to grow my portfolio in 3 different states, right?
Quick
And
question.
so
I'm going to freeze you. I'm going to freeze you a
yeah,
little bit. I know you're on a roll, brother.
yep, 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 yep.
So, how much of that? Because when you feel like it's almost like you feel like, wow, I'm trapped, right? Like, I thought I was the owner of my own destiny. Here I am. I finally made it into the U.S. I finally made it into college. I was able to get through. How much of your perseverance and I don't know some of the things that you did. Obviously, some people chipped in from the Bahamas, but were there things that you learned from the pursuit, getting into college, getting it paid for, and then wow, like I went through all of that for this? Like, what are some of those things that you may have been able to do, or a mindset that you were in to get to the Bahamas? Now, kind of how did that transition to like, okay, I've seen what I've been able to do before. How am I going to be able to do that again? Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
absolutely. And I mean, again, it's a lesson that I learned through a journey, right? That I needed to turn into a blessing. I just love the name of your podcast. I'm gonna like say that a lot. So yeah, to be honest, Tari, I got very comfortable after achieving this dream of becoming a civil engineer, and I was, settling for less, right? Not like going after some of my other dreams and goals and ambitions. I was comfortable, you know. I started stuff and didn't finish it, like all the dreams I had because I was so comfortable in the job. And I did have to remind myself. So when I'm like achieving something new, a part of the thing that helps me to overcome the next situation, I do remind myself like, hey, like, I've done this before. It was just a different story, a different setting, right? And it's really the application of taking desire and faith, right?
Yeah,
Mixing it
yeah,
together,
yeah.
desire, faith, and action, right? Because
Mhm.
nothing is if you don't put the action on it, then no matter what your desire is or no matter what you're having faith for, it won't happen. And so I did remind myself of like, hey, if I did this without any money, right now, I want to achieve all of these real estate goals. Now I just have to put my faith, desire, and action together to achieve these real estate goals. So I definitely learned from that experience coming to the US from the Bahamas with no money. Now I had to take those same skills and evolve it into something even greater for me.
Yeah,
And for me, that was getting into real estate. And I wanted to, I just everybody has their own goal. And I tell people, stick to your goal. Like some people, they want to buy one property a year or one every other year, which is
yeah,
great. Like a lot of times, they're way better off than people who don't make any investments, who just
that's
spend
good.
money.
Yeah.
I've heard, you probably heard it over and over, how just 4 rental properties can change your life when you're retired,
Mhm.
especially like if you pay them all off and everything. Well,
Yeah.
I had a different desire. Like I wanted to get 12 properties a year, right? And so didn't always hit that goal, but I was able to get, pretty close, right? It's like, the good old saying, shoot for the moon. If you miss it, you land
Right.
among the
You'd
stars,
be
right?
amongst the stars, definitely.
Exactly. And because I, always shot, much bigger, I've landed among the stars, right? And so that was sort of my dreams and goals. And a part of the so a lot of times people always ask me how I did it, right? And I like to give some practical steps as well, right?
Yeah, of course.
So I always tell people is these 3 things right here to be successful at real estate. And you can apply these to other areas too, right? So the
Sure.
first thing, I call it the 3 gets, right? The first thing is get educated
For
around the
sure.
topic, right? And so I'm walking you through this journey. So I had to jump in and get educated and
Yeah.
look for some sort of program, look for podcasts, all these different things, like even listening to things like Lessons into Blessings, like listening to these podcasts and programs to educate yourself
Yeah.
on how to achieve what you're trying to achieve, how to get yourself in the right mindset, right? So the first step is getting educated. The second step is getting a coach, right? Because you could do it all on your own. And I realized the trend, like, because there are some other projects that I tried to do on my own and they all failed, right?
Yeah.
Now, some people, they did it on their own and it took them a long time and they were able to figure it out, right? And so I realized, like, do I want to go through, these constant failures? Because we're going to make failure is going to happen in life. Like, we're going to
It's
make
gonna
mistakes,
happen.
right?
Yep.
But you don't always have to. I could learn from your mistakes, Tari, right?
Yep.
If I want to know about a master lease, if I want to learn about multifamily and all the things you're doing, right? I could sit down and have a cup of coffee with you and figure
Yep.
out, how you did it, right? And
Absolutely.
so getting that
And
coach is so important.
I love
Yeah.
that you tap on that a little bit because your coach doesn't have to be formal. It
Mm-hmm.
can be informal, right? Like some people receive coaching through podcasting and videos or finding people that you have a high level of respect for, get breakfast for them, get a cup of coffee, get whatever, do
Mm-hmm.
whatever you need to do to glean the information. A lot of people, I think, sometimes assume people don't have time, or I mean, obviously people respect their time. Successful people's they covet their time, but if you're able to ask for little small bits of that time and be able to, they're willing to give that information. I think people are not don't realize how much people are willing to open themselves and give them information. So I like that. What made you go to the? I know you said you get educated. I know we got one more get. You get
Mm-hmm.
educated, get the coaching. When you
Mm-hmm.
kind of hit that, where along your journey as you were kind of like, man, I'm stumbling in this real estate. You went out there, you went and got it. What was that transition to say, you know what, I just need to like get help?
Yeah, so just like realizing the fact that when I started some of these other business adventures, such as selling products on Amazon, launching a blog, launching a book, all these different things, right? I told you that they failed, and maybe failure isn't the right word for some of them, but some of them, it didn't turn out to be as successful as I wanted, right?
Right,
Um,
understood.
so like my book, like even though I didn't make as much sales as I did, I was able to give more through it, right? And so I
That's
gave out so
awesome.
many copies. I gave it to schools. I spoke. I went around. I did all that for free. So it turned out, instead of being a money maker, it turned out a way for me to give back to the
Yeah,
youth.
that's good.
So yes, I guess that one wouldn't be a failure. So I tried all these different things, and I realized that I went at it on my own. And so I was like, I need to get help through this process, right? And that's how I learned the 3 gets, right? Get
Yeah,
educated, get coach, and the third get is get around the right people, right?
yeah, for sure.
Because I'm sure you heard of the I think it's called the law, or the average law of 5 or whatever. Like pretty much,
Surround
you're the
yourself.
average of the 5 people you
Right,
spend the most time
absolutely.
with, right? And so if you spending time with losers, sorry, you're gonna become a loser, right? If you spending time with real estate investors, you will become that. And so that is so important to get around the right people. And there's so many different ways, Tari, to do it. Like there's free ways to do it. Like there's so much content out there, and there's also paid ways, right? So I tapped into both, right? I tapped into
Yeah.
free ways. I was learning so much, but I wanted to accelerate my success, right? And so that's when I found Master Passive Income with Dustin Heiner. And he's such a giving guy, like awesome guy. And I was able to learn so much through him, and so much so where I started to give back in his community. And he was like, "Hey man, you know, would you like to be a community manager?" I was like, "What's that?" He was like, "It's kind of the same thing you're doing now, you know, helping people." I was like, "Okay, great, right?" And that evolved into so many other things,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
including the Real Estate Wealth Builders Conference, where we met. We get to see each other again in person,
Yeah, for sure.
not too long ago in Phoenix. So, and it's really all about giving back, sharing that knowledge. When you get to when you get to the point where not only you can learn and benefit you and your family, but then you could help other people, is so much more fulfilling. It's so much greater. And you wake up with this sense of purpose to help as many people as possible and paying it forward. So I love what
Yeah.
you're doing with this podcast, because people can tap into it at any point in any moment in their life, and they can learn how to turn their lessons into blessings. They can get beyond that mindset to crush the fear and start investing. So I
Yeah.
just love what you're doing, Terry. Like
No,
I know
no.
I
And
told you before, but I
well,
love it.
you know what's natural is you number one, you're a natural communicator. You could tell you're a natural giver. From the time we met, it was just like it, it was like natural, if that makes any sense, right?
Hmm.
So I know your third get was get around the right people, but I think it's bigger than getting around the right people, right? Because I could be in a room full of the right people and still not get the impact from being around those people, right?
Hmm.
And so I think just listening to you, it's like be effective in that community, right? Like
Hmm.
go out and give and it will come back to you, if that makes any
That's right.
sense. So I
Hmm.
think I'm going to go back a little bit into your story of how you found kind of the coach that you have today. You said there's like so many ways that people can get educated. How do you feel like is a good way for people to narrow down into who the right coach is for them? There's something that attracted you to that community, that attracted you to that coach per se, right? You
Hmm.
probably may have been listening to a lot of different people. I don't know what your story was, but how did you kind of find your coach, and how do you help people kind of narrow down? Because like you said, there's so much education, there's so many ways they can go about it. How was that process for you?
Yeah, so yeah, that there you're totally right. There were so many different programs out there. And so I had to figure out like which program works best for me. And one of the ways I came up with figuring out Master Passive Income is I did my research on it, right? So I was listening to the podcast. I even read some of Dustin's books as well. And I realized too, so for me, I realized that our values aligned in a lot of different ways, right?
Yeah,
Like the attitude of giving,
yeah,
my faith in God, like all these
yeah,
other things, all these like values aligned, right? And so for me, it was kind of like, yeah, like, we believe in a lot of the same things. And then another thing too is, definitely making sure that person is where you want to be, right?
yeah,
Even if our
absolutely.
values aligned, right?
Yeah,
There are plenty of people whose your values may align with, but that person may not have achieved the success that you're looking to achieve
right,
yet. And so
absolutely.
Dustin achieved the success that I wanted, right? And so that was another thing too, right? Because no matter how great you are, like if in my opinion, like you can't teach me how to get where I'm going if you haven't been there, right?
Exactly. You gotta
And so
walk
I
the
think
walk.
you
Yeah,
got to walk the walk. You got to walk the walk. And
for
so,
sure.
and I was also looking for a program. So, Tari, like you've been in this industry long enough to know that there are some big names out there. You sign up for their program, pay lots of money, and you're not even coached by them. You may be
Yeah,
coached by someone who's a good teacher, right?
yeah,
But they haven't achieved the success that you're looking for.
yeah,
And so, I was not looking for a program like that for sure.
yeah,
And so, so I think I think that's a key thing as well when you're looking for a program. And so that was,
Yeah.
so those were kind of like my the things that I did to
No, it's good.
choose the program.
I think definitely core value alignment. I mean, I got a coach too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because anywhere you're going, I tried the same thing. Like, I could try this on my own, or I could get there much faster with the coach, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so that core value alignment was critical, because I don't want anybody that, because a lot of people get it the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one is getting results. Do they get results? What have they done? What's their history? What's their trajectory? I think that's really good. Now, in through your coach, you went from 0 homes to how many homes do you have now? I mean, you
Yeah.
may have filtered through so many. I want people to understand that trajectory,
Yeah.
how you were able to like turn around your success in the single family space.
Yes, I went from I literally went from like zero to 17 doors, right?
You know?
And I sold two of them
Yeah,
when the
yeah,
market was at a high point, right?
yeah,
So I was able to achieve all that success in that short space of time, just from having the right education, the right coach, the right community. And it's definitely been a great blessing for me and my family as well. Just 4 rental properties can change your life, right?
yeah,
So imagine, even more than that. And
yeah,
so for us, that's been it, we've been able to achieve lots of success through it. And now I'm at the point too. So the way you and I met, we met at a multifamily conference in
yeah,
Phoenix, right?
yeah.
And so now I'm looking to, achieve even
Transfer into
more,
that. Yeah, no, that's
transfer
good.
into that, right? So, what if I had, 15 multifamily properties, right? Imagine how
Yeah,
many doors that could potentially be. And
yeah.
so that's kind of like, where I'm like heading next. Yep.
Well, show people how you used and how you were able to acquire so many single family homes in that short span of time. What are some of the things that you use and the vehicles that you use to get into that?
Yeah, yeah. So apart from like using the right skills, like you always have people talk about the right skills, which is great. You gotta definitely one of the things we teach people at Master Passive Income is build a business first, right? Once you build a business first, set up your LLC, get your property manager first before you start buying properties, especially if you're buying out of state, right? Or whatever strategy you're using, build your business first is so key. And then from there, then you can start adding properties in, right? And so all those are step-by-step skills. But
Yeah,
the thing that have really like worked out for me to help accelerate my success as well, apart from having the coaching, which was really really amazing, but really like taking everything I learned from Dustin and applying it, but also like building relationships, right? And I found that that was so key to building relationships, because then you stand out, right? In a room filled with many different people, you want to be the person to stand out. And so for me, I spent a lot of time literally like, calling my realtor, seeing how they're doing, calling wholesalers, going to networking events, how
good.
you
Yeah,
and I met, right? And so
yeah,
because if you have a bunch of deals, right, and I'm looking for deals in your area, and let's just say you've already bought the deals that you want, or maybe you're not buying certain deals in
right.
certain areas. If you know that I'm looking for it, because we built a relationship,
Yeah,
well, I'm going to be one of the persons you think of first,
yeah,
right? So I think that's so key. I think a lot of people, they want to jump in and they want to make it all about the transactions. Yes, the transactions are important. That keeps things flowing, but what really makes you stand out is building a relationship. So I
yeah,
definitely want to touch on that, because you could use that with no matter what your investment strategy is, whether it's short-term rentals, long-term rentals, mid-term rentals, multifamily, single family,
absolutely.
whatever
No
area.
matter any space you're in, relationships are critical.
Relationships are critical. So I would
Yeah.
say that that's a key thing that helped me to go from zero all the way up to all the units I have now.
And so for you, it's every time you meet someone, did you surround yourself around? Obviously, you created you stepped into a community, but were you intentionally making connections with certain kinds of people, like where like, hey, I need to meet wholesaler if I'm going to get some deals. and the right
Hmm.
deals, I need to call all the wholesalers in within the zip codes that I'm interested in, all the wholesalers. What were some of the steps that you intentionally did to kind of create those relationships?
Yeah, so wholesalers were definitely a part of it, and investor-friendly realtors. And so what I did was I joined Facebook groups in certain areas. So like if I wanted to find contacts in Memphis or Little Rock, Ohio, I would join a Facebook group. I would search real estate Ohio, or real estate Cleveland, real estate Memphis, and so forth. And then I would join those groups, and I would start looking for wholesalers because they all post in the group, and then I
Yeah,
would send them a direct message, right? Introduce myself to them and try to keep a conversation going, right? Some of them,
yeah,
you may not be able to build a relationship with, but some of them who respond, you set up a phone call and you constantly check in with them, right? Get
yeah,
organized, right? One of the things that I like to do, I like to create task reminders and even spreadsheets to kind of like track my progress and everything.
okay.
That's what I do. Some people may have it remember it all in their head, but
Hey, no, no,
um,
you gotta have a system, trust me.
you've got to have a system, right? So that's one side of it, right? So wholesale, so meeting people online, and you can get so many different resources in the group. Another way is going to in-person events. So whether it's a real estate meetup or the Real Estate Investors Association, a lot of you have those in your areas around the country, and then also going to conferences as well too, all those different types of events. Like I try to go to the events. I keep saying like getting around the right people, but it's like really like you have to target these areas, right? You may
Yeah.
not be able to find the connections you need in the grocery store, although you might, right? I've had some stories where I ran into people like that, but most like you have a much better chance of meeting the people you need at
Right.
a real estate event.
Intentionality versus luck, for sure.
Exactly. So that's so key, like like going to those events and everything. Those are kind of like some like the main strategies that I use. And then also when you're a part of a community, is so much more powerful because you then have you're taking intentionality to even the next level, right? You're taking it because in our community at Master Passive Income, we have recommended lists, like recommended lenders, recommended property managers, things like that. And the only property managers or lenders or wholesalers that makes those lists is ones that we've used or our students used. And so there may be other communities out there who do something similar, right? And so really being intentional, so because it's really good. Like if you know a really good wholesaler in the Phoenix area, well, I'm probably going to use that wholesaler because I know
Right.
you and you had a good
Yeah.
relationship with them.
It's
So
kind of a referral
referral,
system, right? And you know
absolutely,
that these people have been vetted. So yeah, definitely. That's good
absolutely,
stuff.
yeah.
So in the because I know you raised a lot of private money to take down some of these homes. Like how with creating those relationships, is that what led you into being able to raise private money to start to buy homes or to joint venture with people? What did that
Mhm.
journey look like as you started building the communities and building those relationships?
Yes, so that was so key. So I used a lot of private money to get into these deals. So earlier to you, I mentioned that, I had this goal of closing like 12 properties a year, right?
Yeah.
And so there was one big issue. I didn't have my bank account didn't have, enough money to buy 12 properties a year.
Right, right.
And
Most people
yeah,
don't.
exactly. And so after my first two deals, I exhausted all the funds I had. So, thank God my wife supports my dreams and everything because we had like about $1,000 left in our, emergency account.
Right, right.
I literally exhausted everything. And so I had to figure out, okay, if I'm going to continue this, I have to get creative and somehow. And
That's
for
good.
me, that was using private money. And
Yeah,
so most of my deals that I closed were all nothing down deals. So I bought it with private money, and then I refinanced it into a long-term loan. And in some cases, I was even able to get more money back as well, just because I have this whole system in the types of deals that I find
yeah,
when I'm using private money. And so, but definitely going back to the relationship building aspect, yeah, I had to build relationships with these private money lenders. and literally just focus on the relationship. When don't focus on getting anything in return when you're building
Yeah,
relationships.
that's good.
The benefits are gonna come, right?
Yeah,
And for some of them, they may never come, Tari,
yeah,
never. And
yeah,
so
for
what I
sure.
found, some of the relationships I built in 2019, they might not have led me money until 2022,
Yeah,
right? So you
yeah,
never know when it's going to happen. Some
yeah,
of them would have never funded any of my deals or showed
yeah,
any interest in funding them. Some of them may fund deals for me 10 years down the road, right? And so it's so key to build those relationships. It's something that I mentioned to at the conference over the weekend, the Real Estate Wealth Builders Conference is friendship first, business second. And that's always
yeah,
been my motto. And
yeah,
so, and it helps you because you want to be authentic, right?
yeah,
You
for
know,
sure.
yeah, like some people may think, well, you're going to get something in return. I may not get anything in return, and I'm
Right,
okay with that.
right.
But I'm okay to just be a friend to that person. I'm okay to just give what I can,
Right.
and if we can do
Well,
business later,
that's your natural wiring, right? Like I
yeah,
think it's same here. Like I told people I hate the word sales. You know what I mean? I hate the word selling, right? Like I'm a problem solver and my heart is to give. Sometimes I have
yeah,
to stop myself from it because I lose more than I gain, right? And so it's like your natural wiring is to want to pour into people and to want to
yes,
give. And hey, if I can come up as a benefit of it, then awesome, right? Like when we can win-win and it's a
hmm,
win-win relationship, those are the best relationships. Like it shouldn't be a
absolutely,
space where you lose, I win, you lose. No, if we can figure out how to make it a win-win for both of us. And like you said, friendship first, at the end of the day, even with the mission of multifamily, right? And being able to teach people, how to like all that syndication has to offer and all that these different areas that we're not exposed to has to offer. For me, it's like, man, hey, if you never invest with me, just open your eyes, like see what's out
hmm,
there, right? Like, but hey, if you come along, like, man, I want you along for the journey because if I go up, I want you to go up too, right?
that's right. That
Yeah,
it's so true, and just to see like how much you give, so for some of so whenever our students close two properties, right, at Master Passive Income, we interview them to share their stories, right, and but guess what? We also interview other people. Like we have some people who reached out to us and shared a testimony of how they literally closed several properties off of our free content. Well, we
wow,
let them share their story too in the podcast because even
yeah,
though they didn't pay for anything, but it's great that we get to help them. So
yeah,
I think,
absolutely,
when we can come from that place of authenticity and being a giver,
yeah,
that's going to help you get so much further in life. And even if you don't get as far as you want, you'll at least feel good about it, right?
yeah,
Doesn't it
no,
feel like,
understood.
as cliche as it may sound, like giving is truly the greatest joy. And
Understood.
so,
Well,
and so and
you're not taking the money with you when you go. That's kind of what I always
exactly.
say. Like my mom is the one who kind of gave me that heart because she's just like, yeah, not like it's not coming with me. So
Hmm.
she's always trying to pour into seeing other people's businesses, seeing other people grow their investments because she wants to make sure that they end off at a better place when she's gone. And for me, that I probably that flows a little bit from her, and I'm sure that flows from
Hmm.
your family as well. And that's kind of probably why we connected, right? You surround yourself
Hmm.
around those people because that's what you give off, right?
That's exactly right.
So,
I definitely see that in you, Tari. Like seriously,
yeah,
and I always, when I think back on things, I just, I'm of the belief that nothing happens for a reason, right?
yeah,
We're connected for a reason. There were
yeah,
over 1,000 people at the conference we met in Phoenix, right?
yep,
And out of all the thousands of people there, right? We connected, right?
yeah,
There's something there, right?
yeah,
We share a lot of values. We're both givers, and so I can see what you're saying, like the principles that your mom instilled in you. And if people could have those principles start, you could even do a whole session on that, lessons from my mom, right? Lessons
very
from mom,
true.
make it sound catchy, however you want to say it.
Don't get me
um
started.
yeah, like seriously, that's something that you have on the inside of you that
Yeah,
you could share that the world needs. And
Yeah, no,
so
absolutely,
I'd like to hear
absolutely.
that.
I'm about to give you the host mic. You know what I mean? Well, we got
Yeah.
to end up this session of lessons into blessings, but we never leave off. You gave so many lessons, but what is the biggest lesson uh, that you've gleaned from where you were able to take that? Like I said, we never really call things failures because you were able to transition it. What's the biggest thing you've been able to transition in a blessing? And man, it took off. But biggest blessing that you've been able to glean from the lessons you've learned.
Yeah. Oh man, you caught me on the spot with this question.
I know. I'm sorry. I hate it when
I
I do
No,
that.
it's all good. It's all good. But as you were saying it, for me, like this just it goes back to what I mentioned about friendship first, business second.
Yeah,
So I've learned that that was such a great way to change the whole trajectory of my future, and it's an authentic thing to do, right?
yeah,
To
yeah,
learn to not expect anything back in return. Don't make it
yeah,
transactional. Now there
yeah,
are going to be some times where obviously, if you're selling a property, right, it's not about friendship. You need them to write you that check,
yeah.
right?
Understood. Understood.
But before that, like all of your interactions and everything. So I would say that would be the biggest lesson, is to put friendship first and business second. And I think, by doing that, you're gonna stand out so much. You're gonna get the type of deals that no one gets. Like, people are gonna give you deals just because, I know Tari. I know the
Yeah,
kind of person she is.
yeah,
I know that somebody else can give me 300,000 for this deal. Tari may only have 250 budgeted to purchase this deal, but because I know Tari, she's my
yeah,
friend, I'm going to
yeah,
sell it to her. I've
yeah.
seen I've seen things happen like that
For sure.
over
I mean,
and over
people
again.
people definitely invest in people who they like, know, and trust. Obviously, they have to
Mhm.
to have success.
Yep.
People
Mhm.
don't invest on people who don't win, but it's definitely people they like, know, and trust for sure. So I definitely agree with you on that one. Yeah,
Absolutely, and just a quick example of that
yeah,
is, Charles Seaman. He's a mutual friend of ours,
yeah,
and
for
he's my
sure.
multifamily mentor. And they recently won a deal not too long ago, a multi-million-dollar deal, not because they were the highest bidder, but because they had a good reputation and a good relationship with the
Yeah,
broker.
absolutely,
Right,
absolutely.
a
Goes a
multi-million
long
dollar deal.
way. Don't burn those bridges.
That's exactly right. So I just want to encourage, everyone who's listening to focus on friendship first, business second, and that's going to change everything,
Yeah,
and it's going to make you a
yeah,
better person at the end of the day. Like,
yeah,
I always look at
absolutely.
my life, when I look back, like, even if I don't achieve all the great things I want to achieve, all of the properties and hotels and this, that, I have a lot of big dreams, right? Even if I don't change that aspect of my life, if I've changed lives, if
Yep,
I've impacted
absolutely.
people, then when I leave this earth, I will be satisfied with that, knowing that I've fulfilled my purpose in helping others.
That's it. That's it. You nailed it on the head, dude. I appreciate you coming on, Charles. Thanks for dropping your nuggets. I think people will definitely glean a lot from just the journey that you just really started. Really, this is just the
Mhm.
beginning. This is just the
Just the
scratch of the
beginning.
surface. Just the scratch of the surface.
That's
How
right.
can people connect with you? Just yeah, I always like to give people a little minute at the end to let them know how they can connect with you.
Yeah, so I'm on social media. You can find me on social media on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. If you search Charles Rose Jr., or even if you do / Facebook.com Charles Rose Jr., Instagram.com / Charles Rose Jr. You can find me on all of those sites. I do
Cool.
check all of my messages and everything, my DM. So feel free to reach out. And then also to Tari, so if any of your audience, like, we like to give, right? And so if anyone is looking to build a business in single family, I have a free rental course. Would you mind me sharing that?
Well, we'll drop a link. We'll drop a link in
Okay.
the
Yep.
in our little,
Yep. Yep.
uh,
Just if you just put in the link, Tari, the word rental to 33777 in the link. That'll be great.
cool stuff. Well,
All
thanks
right.
again, Charles, for coming on here, spending a little time with us. And until the next time, that's it for Lessons into Blessings. Stay blessed.